test. Oh, so I've just tried to get you live.
Any news? We're waiting.
Huh?
COVID.
Oh, hello, Ben. I've got a bit of news, Mr. Shem, is that Rabbi Horowitz has agreed to be the speaker at the SIM.
Got to behave now,
So I've just tried to get you live. Who I speak to? I speak to him quite regularly. I really get a lot of chizuk from him. Oh, hello, Ben. Wait, so there's something wrong over here. Oh, it's me. How can I do this? So I'm just trying to get you live. Now, Moshe, why is it? Oh, I asked him to speak in English. He said it's easy in Yiddish. I said no. I said the people prefer English. He said I hope I passed the test because my English is not so good. So I said that if you put in a few Yiddish words,
his English is better than our Yiddish. Okay?
Wait a second. We should do not have to change it from 1/3 of the page to a full page.
It's like you make fun of these Israelis breaking the teeth talking English for you.
Which one do you want to do?
This one. Don't look over my jug of hot water. Just make it this as bigger if you don't mind. So you can't either. Oh.
Just do the short.
Well, they don't do like that. That's okay. Very good. Mr. Shem, he's coming. We need somebody to pick him up or drop him off. Oh, the chus, yes.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
No. You'll pick him up? Okay. Oh, that's better. That's a good idea. Mr. Shem, it was Sol Horowitz. He's coming from the Sim. He's speaking. So, okay. We're up to Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, top of the page. I just want to say a very, very short story. But lots of chizuk for bits. The Satmar Rebbe, Yomi Satmar, became Rav when he was 21. That's a very, very young age. When he was 17, he was already a big time talker, as you can imagine. He was a chassid of the Shiur Rebbe. It's not the Shiur Rebbe, the son of the sons of Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe. It's a grandson of the sons of Rebbe. Moshe Mishnah was called. And he once went to Tish Friday night, and he sees the Rebbe gets up and walks out for 2 minutes. Now, the Rebbe's never leave the Tish. I said a story by Bamni Bells that he once had a fish bone in his throat, and he called the doctor on Shabbat because he said it's a chassidus lefashos, but not during the Tish. He told his Gabba, wait till after the Tish, don't want to alarm the Chassidim. By Tish, you sit there, you don't walk out. And here, he got up and he walked out for 2 minutes. So he was desperate to know why. Eventually, he asked him why. He said, I heard two Chassidim talk about the kugel. And they were saying how good the kugel was. And he said, one of the people that made the kugel is the same that works in my kitchen. So I thought I'll pass on the compliment straight away. So he left the Tish to go and tell some young girl that two Chassidim had complimented the kugel. And Satmar Rebbe used to say this over this story. That was his Rebbe. It's a very powerful story. That's the first opportunity to say something pleasant. You should chaperine. We're up to Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, the Mishnah, top of the page. We're going through a lot of Mishnahs these days, and there are lots of different topics. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go through every one properly. Like, so to speak, as I said, Tosis says, like the Mishnah finishes off all the little topics which go through the Shabbos and Eiruvin. So now we're discussing a problem like this. Tony's actually put up a couple of pictures if you've got the ability. They imagine, what's the problem? You're allowed to close the door on Shabbos. Oh, who wants to be real machmir here?
Close the door.
Close the door. What would be the problem of closing the door on Shabbos? Boina, very good, boina. So why are you allowed to close the door? Oh, because it's part of the building. And what happens if you've got a door to your backyard? The backyard was used a lot or a little. Does anybody remember?
Little.
Very little, very little. Call it the muktzah, set aside. And this backyard, many times what you do is you take a door, take it off, and put it back on when you needed it. Because it was like, when nowadays we have such a thing, maybe one of you can think of it. But basically you take a piece of wood and you stick it there. So putting a piece of wood there, that's a form of building. So would you say mutter or so? What would you say? So it depends a very lot on how it is situated when it's not on the door plate. That means if it's on the floor and you pick it up and put it there, that's very bad. If it's hanging on a nail, I think, is that the picture they've got? Sorry, I just finished. The picture, Tov Kuf Tzadik Dalet, according to, oh, but this is quite good. Oh, Tov Kuf Tzadik Gimel, Tov Kuf Tzadik Dalet. So you've got Tov Kuf Tzadik Gimel, where can you see, oh, no, it's not about picture. You've got like a board, which you put in place, pass it to David. You get a chance. You got a board, you put it there, it's building. But if it's attached, it's not. So let's see the Mishnah inside. Hadeles Sheba Muktzah. By the way, you should know the word muktzah comes from the backyard, because in the backyard you would set aside the things that you'd hardly use on a regular basis. And therefore that's the idea of muktzah. That was the original place of muktzah. But anyway, adel sheba muktzah, the chadokim sheba pilza, chadokim are thorns, which you put to block people. If you don't want people to come into your house, what you should do is put lots of thorns up if you're scared of COVID and police. Or machzolos or mats. You cannot lock with them unless they're up, unless they are above the ground level. And the more explains. If it's being dragged along the floor, big can sometimes they would use a very big jug to block the door, right? If you've got a massive jug, you can use it to block your front door. If they're hanging and they're tied, so you see that it doesn't have to be gvoim min ha'aretz. It doesn't need to be above ground level. Even if it's on ground level, if you look at that picture, it's actually on ground level. The one which the Mishnah wants, I think Arzkov got a picture of it, where maybe you can put it on the group, where it's actually above the ground, which in a way is better. So here we have Machlikas Abai and Rava. Abai and Rava both agree that the difference is that either it had a hinge, according to Rava, as long as it once had a hinge, it's okay. Alternatively, that it's got a hinge, according to Abai. So it comes out that in order to use a board which is hanging and you want to use it to block your gate, you have to have one of two things. Either it has a hinge, according to Rava, according to Abai, or once did have a hinge, according to Rava. Or alternatively, that it's above ground level, meaning it's hanging on the ground level. For example, these boards over here, they're not hanging, and they're not, what's the word for, they're not tied. So these would be also to block a doorway on Shabbos. We had it in Shabbos by the window, by the skylight. What? That's actually a good question. Why not? It's mamish, that's sugya.
The windows are much more used.
Yeah, but okay, it still makes a lot of sense to put it there. I don't, right? Meisvei deles nigers macht es nigers ze ganken an niger zach kshuv tzlun negoy min haaretz afilim lo inim mon alin bohem. If they're hanging above the ground, even if it's only by a thread, you can lock with them. Vim lav ein alin bohem. And it doesn't talk anything about a hinge or not a hinge. So it's mashman or like a Abai Rava. So it says Abai metarz tamei, Rava metarz tamei. Abai metarz tamei oishe shlein si oishe goy min haaretz. You have to add in the words either it's got a hinge or it's above the ground. If it once had a hinge, or it's above the ground. Okay, so let's get it clear so far. If you've got a door which is clearly made to block the entrance, that is fine. How can you make it clear that you want to block the entrance? So if it's on the hinges, there's no shaila. If it's just attached to a rope, if it's hanging from the air, that means it's hanging from the rope, that's good enough. That shows that you're intending to use it to put it in to block it up, and therefore that's okay. Bundles like a bundle of thorns, the chavirin, and bundles, stamp bundles. You put it in the pills and the chotzer. If they're tied, you can use them on Shabbos and of course on Yom Tov. Here we have quite big machlikas showing a completely two different explanations over here. One explanation is we're talking about that they also had hinges. And if that's the case, it's literally the same halacha that Abai and Rava were talking about, that when you have hinges, you can use it. Other Mephoshim say like this. There's a very big difference between your chotzer and your muktzah. The chotzer is like a front door where you open and close all the time. Therefore, you do not need to have a hinge. Even if it's got no hinges, since you're on a regular basis opening and closing, it's not boina. Mashenkin, the back door, is like a door, like a fire exit door. Well, you only use it every so often. So there, Chazal were more machmir, because when you put the board there, it's much, much longer, and then you need a hinge. So it comes out machlukas rishonim for your chotzer door, do you need to have a hinge or not? Because in this brisa, it doesn't mention a word about hinges. So either the brisa means that it's obvious with the way hinges, and therefore you do need a hinge, or we're talking about it's got no hinges, and the heta is because it's to a front gate, and a front gate used much more often, and you don't need a hinge. Deles almona, a door which is almona. Almona is a woman, unfortunately, who doesn't have all what she needs. She's not well protected. So here it's a borrowed term. We mean a door that's not well, it's not properly formed. It's not got everything it needs. Hanigveres, and it's on the floor. You can't lock it. You can't use it. And says Tosfos, if you look at the second Tosfos, we're talking about a door that has a hinge, because if we've got no hinges, we said that a door, you can never use a door without a hinge. So therefore, we're talking about a door that has a hinge, and you can still not use it. Why can't you use it? Because it's lacking in the door. The whole door is made out of one piece of wood, like these. These are like one board. The Leste Gashma, we have two mahalchim in the Rishonim. Either it's got no frame, this can see it's got a frame. This, we're talking about a doorway without a frame. Or, it's a shame because my back door has it, onto the side door. What they used to do is like this. They used to take a few pieces of wood, and then they would take another piece of wood and screw it across all the thin woods. And then that way you would have a door, right? That's how you'd have a door.
I'll see it often in the gate.
Yeah, garden gate is like that. You've got, let's say, 5 pieces of wood like this, and then one down the middle, and the one down the middle keeps one in place, and then you've got a door. And what happens if instead of putting one down the middle, you just bang a nail from one to the next and push them into each other? So that's a lacking a door. It doesn't look like a normal door. And even if it's got a hinge, you're not allowed to use it on Shabbos.
And even if you're using it as a door.
Even if you're using it as a door. And as we said, we're talking about where it's nigveres, where it's not in its place, it's on the floor. Like looking a little bit like these pictures on top of that, it gives you a bit of an idea what we're talking about. That you got to have the downward, or you got to have the frame. One of them is machlokes is showing him what's the pshat of it. Okay. Omar Yehuda. This is a very interesting halacha. Is like this. That boina is awesome in hatera when you build a real building. A temporary building is not awesome in hatera. So, for example, let's say your children say to you, "We want to make a tower out of kapla." You know what kapla is? Wooden pieces of wood. What do you say? Mutter asa.
Make a roof.
You knock it down.
Oh. If you make no roof, it's fine. If you make a roof, like a bridge on top, let's say, so there's a temporary building.
I thought you meant like just stacking on top of
Yeah, stacking on top. That's fine. But if you make a roof, so that's a binyan. That's called the binyan.
That's not done.
Oil arai is also with rabbanon. Oil arai is also with rabbanon. I remember once going to Shiur Fark, we were really scared. And what children sometimes do, my children do sometimes, take a chair, take another chair, take a blanket, cover the two, and they've got a space underneath. What's that? It's oil arai. Oil arai is also with rabbanon. So I'm not going to Maisa. There's a very interesting bialoch in Shin Nun Daled that says that anything which the children do without your help, and it's only awesome to rabbanon, and they do it as playing, do not need to stop them. So what? Because at the end of the day, this is the shul mashma. Even like as long as it's like playing ages, 8, 9 is also fine. But this is a very complicated shot. Now, the Eked Kudah says like this. So what are you going to do? There are various cases which are not so common nowadays, in where you are doing temporary building. So there's a solution. What's the solution? When you build from down up or from up down? Down up. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to build. You can't usually build the roof and then build the walls below. The Gemara here says that if you do it the opposite way around, then okay. Yeah, the Gemara says the case. If you do it the opposite way around and it's a temporary building, it is mutter completely. Oh, so how do you do it? So let's example, you want to make a stack of pots. So you've got 5 pots, and you're going to put barrels, right? We're going to have loads of barrels, stacks of barrels. You want to make a stack of. So you hold the upper barrel, and then you put the other barrels underneath it, rather than building it on top of each other. What? Cap would be very difficult, yes. So we'll give a few examples. You want to make a bonfire in Yom Tov. You have to make a bonfire in Yom Tov. Why? To keep yourself warm. So you can do it the other way around. What you do is because how to make a bonfire, you make loads of wood, and you stack them, and then you build on top of a flat platform in order to make it a proper bonfire. So if you make first the top, then the bottom, it's okay. If you want to use eggs, nowadays they used to use eggs even to support the beds. So let's say you want to make a stack of eggs, put the higher eggs before the lower eggs. Kids are the same by pots. By beds. For example, let's say in the older days they would have this bed, which what it was a wooden frame, and then afterwards you'd spread out into a blanket. And the wooden frame would have straps, and that way you'd put the blanket across the straps. First put out the blanket, then build the frame underneath. The same thing by barrels. Okay. This is important halacha that when you're coming to do a temporary building, if you do it the wrong way around, it is mutter. So now the more says tiny bit of Agadata is that we talked about thorns before. The Apicurus said to Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, Chadko, you are a thorn. If you remember, do you remember I once asked that Rabbi Shua ben Chananya said, nobody ever won me in an argument. And the Ben Yehuda showed me something that I saw Ben Yehuda, I was like thrilled beyond belief. What's Ben Yehuda say? What's great to say about somebody that never lost an argument except for 3 times in life?
No, never
Oh,
argued.
he never lost an argument except for 3 times in his life. When was that? The girl, the boy, and the list was great. He said, what was so special? Because Shimon Hanani spent his whole life fighting with Apikosim, and he never lost, even for a moment. So he says like this. Because one said to him, you're a thorn. It says about you, Pasuk in Micha. Tuvam, the Tuvam kechedek, the good ones like thorns. Now the truth of the matter is, Apikoros on some level had a point, because this Pasuk is Musa to Klal Yisrael, telling them that even you good ones are so bad that you're like thorns and therefore you deserve punishment. So it's Teichachom. What Shua does is he changes the meaning of the Pasuk to say it in the positive sense. So he said, Amalei Shati you fool, Shafal Sefer to call. Read the end of the Pasuk to say, Yoshem and Mesucha. Now again, the Pasuk Shati is those who are straight are like a barrier. Just like a barrier can be sometimes a pain in the neck, so too Yosha, those who are straight, can sometimes be difficult for Kaisar. But he explained, Yosha, those who are straight, are better than a sukkah. A sukkah is a protection, it's a shelter. And those who are straight are even better than the sukkah. So you see that the pasuk is being complimentary. The elo ma'ituvum kechedek, keshem shechadok valolu. Just like a thorn, like so they protect of a hole. Let's say, for example, you've got a barrier and it's got a crack that you want to make sure that Gadol don't come in. So what do? You put thorns. The good people in Klal Yisrael are like thorns. It's not a criticism. It's saying just like the good ones, just like thorns are protection, also Klal Yisrael are protection. They crush the Rishon. The word chedek can be notion hodek hater, when you crush. The Mahadknis Shem the Gehenim Shlema Kumui Vidushi Bastion. You Yerushalayim should crush Kikanich your horns Osim Barzel and make like iron. Or Parsoisecha and your feet Osim Nechusha make like copper. But when Mashiach comes, we will crush the nations as if our feet are made out of iron, etc. So he said that the pasuk doesn't mean negative; it means complementary. Either that we're like thorns, we protect the world, or because of the fact that we're like thorns that we crush the enemies. The famous medrash is beginning of Eiruvin is that one of the Amiroim came to a town. And he said to them, "Show me the people that protect the town. Show me Neturei Karta. Neturei Karta means those who protect the city." What happened was they took him. They took him and they showed him the weapons and the soldiers. And he said, "That's the Neturei Karta. That's not the Neturei Karta. Machrive Karta. Those who fight all the time, they destroy the cities. What's the Neturei Karta?" He said, "Where is the Neturei Karta? People that go to the Shiur every day, those are the Neturei Karta." So therefore, that's where they got the name. That's where they picked up the name Neturei Karta from that Medrash Nechel. You see that people who do mitzvahs, they protect the city. Says the Mishnah. We've had this again. It's hard to understand the continuation again. Let's try and get the picture clear. If you don't mind to look for a moment. Okay, before we get to the pictures, let's try and get it clear. You've got a person standing in the Rishus Harabim. Now, for some reason, what they do is they would keep the key. Let's look at the picture, maybe. Keep the key in the Rishus Yochid and open the door like that. So look at picture, if you've got it. Picture Tofkuf Tzadik Hey. Just for a moment. What would happen is you're standing in the Rishus Harabim. Can you see it? You can't show it the gun and Chaim. What happens is like this. You're standing in the Rishus Harabim and the key is in the Rishus Yochid. And you want to unlock the door which is in the Rishus Yochid. What's the problem? It means like this. It's a very strange system, not like nowadays where you take your key.
The house is on the street.
I don't understand, but where did they keep the key? Always there.
No, like to leave it out. I mean, I know that there.
So why does every Ganav come in?
No, it's hidden in the post box.
Maybe a key safe.
No, naturally, yeah. Well,
But this Mishnah, okay, this Mishnah is talking about where the key is in your house, and you want to unlock your house, and all you're doing is standing in the Rishus Harabim. So you're doing nothing wrong because the key is already in the Rishus Yochid, and you're trying to open the Rishus Yochid. The only problem is where Choshesh, you might pull it out. You don't have to pull it out.
You want to open your front door.
That's not what the Mishnah is talking about, but that would be a similar case. No,
So it's still attached to the Rosh Hashanah.
no, that's still also.
No,
What-
you're standing on the street. You want to open your front door, which is right.
Oh, that's a problem. That could be a problem. Here we're discussing a different case when you're standing in the Rosh Hashanah and you're trying to open the Rosh Hashanah, but you're standing again. You're standing in the Rosh Hashanah. The key is in the Rosh Hashanah, and you're trying to open the door, which is in the Rosh Hashanah. So you're not doing anything wrong. The chashash is only that you might take the key out. So now we had a very similar case of drinking water, or for example, moving things. This is a similar case.
Yeah, it's also a problem in the houses. I mean, okay, now it's nailed. People,
Right.
people not keeping people closing the door,
Right.
locking the door.
Yes, that's what somebody said. I think you understand that. That if you've got a key and you take it out, yes, you've got a
Then
problem.
you put the
Yeah.
Thomas bill.
Yes, that's a problem. But that's not what we're talking about here. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a bit like, for example, this is the house. Imagine this is my house. And the key is in the house. And outside this house is the Shusari. I'm picking up the key from the house, opening the door, putting the key back in the house. So what's the chashash? Chashash, I might take it out. So, so it's like, for example, you've got a shelf. That's how I tried to show the picture. You've got a shelf, which is part of the house. Let's say, for example, this is the window of the house.
He's in the door.
The keys in the door, or for example, the keys on the shelf in the crevice of the door, and then you don't need to take it out. You can just open it like that. That's how I was bothered to ask Avov that what in the world would they use these keys for if they left the key in the door? And anybody said to me, we don't ask such technical
No, in
questions.
case you want to have it open,
Could be hidden.
to lock it.
No, but
He knows where in the crevice.
okay, what?
Standing there.
Like to stop children running out on that.
Ah, okay. So lo yamud adam b'shusay yochid v'yiftach b'shusay b'shusay. So v'yiftach b'shusay. B'shusay v'yiftach b'shusay yochid. Elim ken osam mechitza k'vei asot tvachim tivei ameh. Unless you make an area around yourself that you're already in the b'shusay yochid. That means you make, for example, a porch, and then you're standing in the porch, and the key is inside your house, and you're opening your front. That's fine because you're in the b'shusay yochid, and the house is b'shusay yochid. That's fine. But if you've not got a porch and you're standing in Shusay Rabim and you're opening a house, even if the key is already in the Shusay Yochid, you might take it out. They said to him, we object. There was a shuk of butchers, the people that fatten chickens. They would lock it, even though they stood in the Carmelis, which is the Yerushalayim, and they'd open and lock the doors. It was a marketplace where they would sell wool. It's fascinating that Rabbi Yossi is not arguing at all halachically, only the details of the story. Because whenever you want to know halach, you want to make sure it's all clear. More we'll discuss it. But basically, in this marketplace, they used to stand in the Carmelis and open and lock the door. When you open and lock the door, you're being over because you could end up taking it into the Carmelis. Says the Gemara, he was talking about Shusarabim, and they're discussing a Carmelis. If not for the fact they would lock the doors, then it would be a Yerushalayim. But now that they lock the doors of Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim was a Carmelis. Yerushalayim did not have the din of a Yerushalayim. Why? They would lock the doors. There was no way of getting through Yerushalayim at night. And it's meaning like this. Once there was destruction, once the Goy managed to make holes in the walls of Yerushalayim, so then locking the gates did not take away its status of Yerushalayim. So it was a Yerushalayim. So Yerushalayim was a Yerushalayim. That means they understood that from Rameir that he's telling us this halacha not just in Yerushalayim but also in the Carmelis. That means if you're in your garden, a garden is a Carmelis usually, and you're opening the gate of your garden to go into a place which is a Yerushalayim, you've got the same problem. Says the Gemara, says Rameir, not only am I forbidding it when you know Shusarabim opening Shusayachid and Shusarabim, but also when you know Carmelis to Shusayachid and vice versa. Says Kufala from the base. Unless make a mechitza 10 tvachim high, that's just a Rameir. So you see that they were not concerned about the fact that you might carry into the Carmelis. It was a place for the wall. So again, it comes out that we have two different machlikas, Chachamim and Rameir. What's the two machlikas, Chachamim and Rameir? Machlikas number one is, if you're standing in the Rishus HaRabim, can you open the lock of Rishus HaYachid? Are we choishes you might take it into Rishus HaRabim? Rameir says we are choishes not. And it's furthermore, by a Carmelis, we have the same machlikas. According to Rameir, you cannot stand in the Carmelis. For example, you heard this case, where, for example, let's say there would be no Eiruvin in Manchester. So in most places, by the time you come to your front door, you're standing in the Carmelis. It's almost impossible to be standing in the Rishus HaRabim in the front door. So you take your key off your Shabbos belt, and you open the front door. That's actually worse, I'm thinking, as I'm saying it, because then when you open the front door, you're going to, and then you open the door, you're going to be over carrying from a Kabbalah into Shusayachid. So what do people do? They keep the key on the belt. Your front guard's in Shusayachid, so then you're okay. Block of flats, yes. Right.
The entrance was like set back.
Right. Oh, so if it's set back, so maybe once you're standing into the entrance, you're ready in the Shusay Yochid.
I don't know if it was just a yacht because we couldn't carry in the hallways.
Right, and the entrance was set back. It was private. It was only to your grandparents. Or it was to everybody.
No, to everyone. Saying the entrance was like a covered entrance, like
Oh, for the whole block of
almost
flats.
a porch, but without a door.
Oh, so it's also. But it's a
I
Kabbalist.
think
But
we used to have a belt and then turn the key while it was on the
belt, yes. You could have another advantage is by you coming into the front door, you're going into the hallway of the flat.
It's also.
So that's also a Kabbalist.
Yeah.
So it's a Kabbalist to a Kabbalist. So maybe there's mutter.
Then it's okay.
Could be.
Front door locked itself.
Part of the Shusay Yochid I hear. But here, they're okay because they were going from the porch from Kabbalist to Kabbalist. Yeah. Yeah, you have to put your key on the belt and then open and lock the door. Tell them about it.
Take the belt and you stand, you can't take the belt off, put it back on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so let's look at these pictures again for one moment. Sorry, Tov Kuf, Sadi Hey, and Sadi Rob. So you've got somebody who's got like a box where he puts the key and he opens the lock. The lock is inside the box. What's the status of this box? What's the status of the box? Oh, very good. What size is it? That's the main question. If it's 4x4 and 10 tvachim high, it's a Shusay Yochid. Anything less than that, it's a Karmelis. So, what? Oh, if it's less than 4x4 and less than 10x10, then it's a Karmelis. So there's Moket Petul. Right. So now,
Depends how high it goes.
why? No, wherever it is. If it's 4x4, 10x10, 10x10 we start from the ground. 10x10 we start from the ground.
Less than that.
If it's 10 tvachim, right. So again, the status of this cabinet is dependent on its size. If it's 4x4 big and it's 10 tvachim high from the ground, it's a Shusay Yochid. So now, if you look at these pictures, what they've done is they've added a hut to these entrances. You show around the pictures. They've added a hut. The hut is either on the inside or the hut is on the outside. So when you're standing in the hut and the key is in itself is in a cabinet which is a Shusay Yochid, yeah,
Like a porch.
yes, it's a hut to me. The way you're calling it a porch, but if you want to call it a porch, call it a porch. It's funny, for some reason they made the roof very unstable, but there's no reason for that. Yeah, but pass it forward again. If you make a hut, so then if you're standing in the hut, you've got literally no problem. Why have you got no problem standing in the hut? Have you got the pictures?
Yeah,
You got the, oh, very good. Because then you should say Yochid and you carry the Yochid. If you, right. So if you, for example, the picture Tov Tzadik came when the hut's on the inside, you can only open it from the inside. You can't open it from the outside. In Tov Tzadik Vav, you can only open it from the outside. You cannot open this door from the inside, according to Amir. You will not be allowed to open this door according to Amir from the inside. So the device, let's say inside. If they've got a gate to him, you can open and close from the inside. If the hut is on the outside, if there's a hut on both sides, you can open and close both sides. If they don't have a hut on either side, it's forbidden on both sides. Similarly by shops, by stores. Now, Rashi explains a very strange thing. For some reason, these cabinets, which we said were used for the dug keys, when it would come to a garden, they were always 4x4 and 10x10. That was the derech ha'olam. That's right.
From the ground.
From the ground. That was the standard size. But by shops, they were not a standard size. Some were big, some were small. So the Brisa did not bother to tell us the halachas if it's a different size in the first half of the Brisa, which is talking about a garden gate, and only talks about this question in a shop gate, because for some reason by a shop gate, they would have sometimes bigger cabinets and sometimes smaller cabinets. But there's no halachic ramifications here whatsoever, very straight. Maybe So here, let's get it very clear. You've got a cabinet which is 4 by 4, but less than 10 by 10 high. Less than 10 high. Who remembers what the status of this cabinet is? It's 4 by 4, but it is less than 10 by 10 high. No, if it's 4 by 4, it's a caramelist. It's a caramelist because it's only a Mokim P'tur if it's less than 4 by 4. But I didn't say it so clearly. It's 4 by 4 and less than 10 by 10. It's a caramelist. Now the doorstep, what's a doorstep? Is always a caramelist. The doorstep is 99%. It's always a caramelist. So if you're standing on the doorstep and the lock is in a cabinet which itself is a caramelist, you're fine. So what you do is you take your key, put it on the doorstep before Shabbos comes in, and then when Shabbos comes in, you can pick it up from the doorstep and open your door. Whilst it is empty in your house. But if it's higher than 10, so now if you put your key on your doorstep and try and open the lock, what are you doing? You're transferring from the doorstep, which is a caramelist, to a lock, which is a shusayachit. Maybe put it inside the lock. And the mochon Shabbos Pesach Manol Machzil Mekumu, you have to put back in its place to be Rameh. You can put it down on the doorstep. You can take it from the doorstep and put it in the lock or in a window. Also, if the window is 4 by 4 and it's a window in the wall, so 4 by 4 is awesome. Now, this is very difficult because the Chom over here are telling you that you take the key before Shabbos, put it on the doorstep, and then on Shabbos you can't pick it up from the doorstep and open the lock, even though the lock is 4 by 4. We're talking about a caramelist just like Begina. What's this key doing? If we're talking about it's less than 4 by 4, it's a Mokim P'tur, and then there's absolutely no Chiddush. If you have a the Gemara brings the whole Vaisa again. I saw something in my gear that it's not necessary to repeat the whole Vaisa. Meaning like this, that if we're talking about where the lock is 4 by 4 and it's 10 high, so now how are you allowed to take it from the doorstep and put it into the lock? You're coming from a Kamelis of Shlochit. That means the Chomim in our Mishnah, they only permitted you to keep it in one Rishus. I will not Choshesh will come to take it out. But they never said that you're allowed to move something from Kamelis to Shlochit. If the lock is already in Rishus HaYochid and you're standing in the Kamelis, that's fine. But here, you're standing you're picking up the key from the Kamelis and putting it in the lock. That's awesome. Answers the Gemara. We're talking about a lock which is not 4 by 4, but there's enough area that it could become 4 by 4, and this is the machlokes we've had before. Where else did we have it? The zuzah. If you've got a house which is an archway, what? We had another case by Bob. Yes, very good. We had it there as well, but it's easier by the sides. Very good. Yes, you had its word stuff approximately. Is that? Where is it? Gimel, Yud Aleph. Okay. Oh, it's a long way away. Right. Okay. Let's get it clear. So again, let's get clear. There's a concept that if you've got the ability, if you've got a hole in the wall, that's actually another case. Actually, not another case. I remember in Shabbos. If you got a hole in the wall which is less than 4 by 4, so it's not a Rishus HaYochid. But if it's got enough area that you could make the whole 4 by 4, it is a Rishus HaYochid. Similarly, this lock is not 4 by 4. According to Ameh, it could become a 4 by 4. It's considered a Rishus HaYochid. According to Chachamim, it's not considered a 4 by 4. So it's a Kabbalish, which is not.
You know, this like number lock thing. You put a key in and like this number lock. You can hang outside.
Yes.
That'd be okay.
Not 4 by 4.
Right, so let's think for a minute. Let's say the wall, if it's inside your garden, that's right. So if it's in your garden, you manage to find it. Let's say you put it outside your garden wall. So your garden wall is a Carmelis. You open up the thing and you take out the key and you're standing in a Carmelis. How are you going to then bring it to your front door? You're going to be carried from a Carmelis to It'll be awesome. So I'll just see what's awesome.
On your front door, it won't be big enough to make it.
Yeah, it's not. That's nothing.
It doesn't tap.
We don't think Mashma according to Amir when he passed like according to Amir. Shram no hoda be Amir Shayigino. In our Mishnah, we explain that Amir is machbir both by Rosh Hashanah and Rosh Hashanah and also by Karmelis. But over here, we're talking about Shayigino, and he said that you're allowed to take the key, leave it on the doorstep, and open the door. Now, when you leave it on the doorstep and open the door, it didn't say you have to actually stand on the doorstep. It said it's enough that you leave the key on the doorstep and open the gate, because we're talking about a case where the doorstep is a Karmelis and the lock itself is a Karmelis. Oh, you're standing in the Rosh Hashanah and you could end up carrying. The Torah says from a Karmelis to Rosh Hashanah is only to Rabbanon. So Rameh himself was not Choshesh. It's a double Kaseh, Rameh never Choshesh. And finally, the Shema Mino Midrabbanon Isle Dravdimi. We see that we pass like Rav Dimi, because if you remember over here in this case, what happened was like this. The Chomim said, if you've got a lock, which is a mokim patur, and you leave the key on Friday afternoon on your doorstep, you're allowed to take the key from the doorstep, which is a Karmelis, open up the lock, which is a mokim patur, and then put it back on the doorstep. But you mustn't pick it up from the doorstep, put it in the lock, and then afterwards put it in the window, which is Rosh Hashanah. Why? When I picked up from the Karmelis, I put it into the lock, which is Mokim Patur. I've done nothing wrong. And from Mokim Patur to Shusayach, there's also nothing wrong. So what's the Issa? That you're not allowed to use a Mokim Patur to transfer a Rishus. It's a very important halacha that if you take something from Rishus Hashanah to Mokim Patur, you're never allowed to take it from Mokim Patur to Shusayach. And in fact, we shouldn't point out that over here it's a Kavachim, because over here it's not Rishus Hashanah to Shusayach. It's a Karmelis to Mokim Patur, and the Mokim Patur to Rosh Hashanah, and after became the Chachamim say it's also. So it says, well, Shema Minod, Isa, Dimi, Dechios, Dimi, Mabich, the Mokim Shem Boy Arbo Al Arbo. It was less than 4x4. Motiv Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, the Kasef Olav. Uvelvad Shlo Yachlifu, as long as they don't swap, meaning as long as they don't swap from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah and vice versa. And we see this halacha from Shittas Chachamim. Next Mishnah, Nago. Nago is a bolt at the door. So it's picture, hopefully Tony puts it up already. It's picture Tov Kuf Tzadik Ches and Tov Kuf Tzadik Tes. This is hard for us to understand because we do not have these things so easily. Now the problem, these pictures are bolts which you use to make that the door should not move. The problem is it looks like boina. The more that it does not look like boina, the more mutter it is. Yes, that's right, similar to that. Now, one way not to make it look like a boina is people don't build with vessels. You only build with bricks and with mortar and cement. If you've got something which is a keli, then you don't build with it. So one of the missions it talks about is Nagashishpe Glustra. It's got a rounded top. What could you use? What? Big pin. What would you use that for? Why is that a keli? What could you use it for? Very good. Pestle and mortar. Oh, so let's see the mission. Nagashishpe Glustra. Because he holds that it still looks like boina. Rav Yossi Mati. Rav Lezer Ma'aser B'Knesset Sheb'Tver was a shul in Tver. She'nagin bo yeheta ad shebogim nevas kidim also that you see they forbade it. Rav Yossi Meisur no listen no boy bogim nevas kidim into land. So have a machlokas whether they were mate or not. So the question is, so it goes like this: Benita ba'ogdoi, if it is tied to the door. And it's so the rope is so strong that the rope is able to lift it up. Everybody agrees that it's mutter because everybody can see that this is just a part of the door. That's picture Tov Kuf Tzadik Tes, right? Where it's tied to the door and it is lifted by the door. But now, this picture Tov Kuf Tzadik Tes is not brilliant because it's actually the bolt is dragging on the floor. We're talking about where it's not dragging on the floor. They don't want to make too many pictures because later more talk about dragging on the floor. So you have to imagine the same thing where the bolt is not dragging on the floor, but it's hanging in the air. So it looks like it's made for the door. Since it looks like it's made for the door, so it's okay. Where it's not taken by its rope. Why? Because the rope is so weak that if you try to lift it with the rope, it would snap. The since it's got a top, it's got like a rounded knob at the top. So to ask keli, it looks like a keli. And since it looks like a keli, so therefore people would not think that you're doing boida. Since you can't take it with its rope, So therefore, at the end of the day, even though it looks like a keli, it is also. And therefore, according to him, you're not allowed to use it. I would like to carry a little bit because the next couple of days are quite long. And on Friday, we never managed to do a lot. I don't want to leave too much from what's the Shabbos. If you don't mind, just a few more minutes. Anybody put that? Do you mind just a few more minutes? The end of the Masechta will go. It says the Mishnah, Naga and Nigro. That's the picture we just looked at now, where it's actually dragging on the floor. So far we've had a Naga which is hanging in the air. Everybody agrees it's okay. A Naga which has got a bowl at the top. What is the din? Machlekes Tanoim. A Naga which is dragging on the floor. You can use it to the base of Mikdash and Medina. Munach, if it's literally on not tied at all, but it's literally not tied to the door, can also. Munach mutter. If it's on the floor, it is mutter. But Mikdash, mutter b'Mikdash. V'anigo b'Medina, and if it's dragging, it's mutter b'Medina. There's a couple of concepts of it. One concept is there's no such thing as a issa d'Rabbanon in the base of Mikdash. There were matir shvus b'Mikdash. Why were there matir d'Rabbanon in the base of Mikdash? Even better, you should say to yourself, you're a Kohen. Kohanim zvizimim. Kohanim or we will see that you're only allowed to a shvus per mikdash. Let me just finish up again. Kohanim zvizimim. Kohanim or what's a good word for zvizim? Conscientious. Okay, not bad words. I don't think it's the right one, but we'll pass it. Kohen, what? Keen. Doesn't matter. Or alternatively, Chazal wanted that the avoid the base of Mikdash shouldn't get disturbed, so the Rabbonons are permitted in the base of Mikdash. Now, here we're going to have a few machlokes of different levels regarding doing things base of Mikdash. Shittas Tanakama, which is Meir, he says like this: that in the base of Mikdash you can lock with it, but not in the rest of the country. Why? Because he held that Naga and Nigro is a Issa D'Rabbanon because it's Mechzi Keboina. So therefore, the base of Mikdash, it's okay, but everyone else is no good. But if it's on the floor, it's not a D'Rabbanon, it's a D'Oraisa, and therefore it is also even in the base of Mikdash. Rabbi Yehuda said no. When it's Nigra, it is Mutter completely because it doesn't even look like Boina. And when it is Munach, it's only also with D'Rabbanon. Says the Gemara, Toda Rabbanon Ezu Naga and Nigro Shenayim BeMikdash Shavei BeMedina Kosher Koshu VeTolui. If it's tied, if it's dragging on the floor, that means one hand is not dragging on the floor, one hand is dragging on the floor, that is what is mutter in the base of Mikdash, also everyone else. Anything which you would leave in the corner, meaning it's not attached to the door at all, then it's a chashash d'Rabbanon. I tell you, these halachas so very, very complicated. I remember when I was in Eretz. So if you did sponge it, you have to sponge in Eretz, one of those delights. So there's a whole, and what happens is you have to lift up the white circle from the floor. Is that considered boina and soisa, to lift it up and put it back down? No, but let's say on Shabbos you want to get some water to go there, right? You've got a child spilled something. Or alternatively, if you've got drain pipes, these metal grates. Is there any issa of taking the metal grate off? You can't take it off. They've always put them in a way where it's quite hard to take them out. But let's say you could. Is that point or so? There's a lot of shilas putting a bolt on the door. This way we hear you put this plastic in the way that you can't open and close the doors. These are lots of shilas. It's very, very hard though to Madame Inyan to compare topics. But right, so the Gemara said so far that we've got three different kinds of nago. Great stop over here. One is nago sheshvei. It's got a bowl where it looks like a keli. It's machlokes Tanoim, we pass him the kula that it's okay. And nago, which is taken by its rope, then everybody agrees that it's okay. If it's hanging in the air, that's fine. If it's hanging on the floor, then it is also with D'Rabbanon, and therefore it's only mutter the base of Mikdash. If it's not hanging anywhere, according to the camera, it's also in Ateh. According to Yehuda, it's only also with D'Rabbanon. Any questions? It's hard Gemaras these because it's very hard to compare to anything that we know. We don't really do these bolts on our doors. So we're up to Omar Yod Omar Shmuel, how we pass them. Okay. Very good. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. Also like 4 Mishnahs tomorrow. Right. So how are you feeling in bed? You actually look a little bit thick. Wearing your hood, are you okay? You don't feel like
okay.
Hope you feel well. So have a full shleima.
Hopefully I'll be all right. Yeah, on me.
When you get to your results,
Hopefully tomorrow.
What do you feel?
Hopefully I'm okay.
He said yesterday he was under the weather. You
Oh.
feel a bit under the weather.
Yeah, I'll survive.
Positive, you don't know us.
that's I've never met you before.
Don't worry.
We've always kept miles away from each other anyway.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
Not real neighbours.
Hopefully I'll be okay.
That's